All right, guys, part two here. It was just going to be impossible to get all of that done in 15 minutes. Hopefully, you've stayed tuned to both parts. If not, part one is just above this one, probably in the search bar. You could probably use the same title and search part one, and you'd probably find it. If you have been with me the whole time, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to remind you once again, I'm a coach and contributor, DFSArmy.com. One-stop shopping, all things daily fantasy sports, from MMA to NASCAR to PGA to any of the sports that you like to play. We've got coaching and cheat sheets, and we teach people to become better players through videos and articles and tools like these that are going to make you think about things in a little bit different way and maybe teach you the ins and outs, the fundamentals of the game. I went through the first video and kind of set up a little bit of player pool, showed you how to search for higher owned lineups for cash games. But we're starting to work on the GPP or the tournament side of things now. And all I've done is set up some of my stacking parameters here on Draftkings. 5 stacks usually win. You can use 3s and 2 and 4s, but 5 stacks usually win, so we like to use those. 5 by X, 5 by 2, 5 by 3, and you put little weights on these guys, right? You can randomly mix the teams from stack 1 and stack 2 together by clicking this button here. And let's say you want to put about 30% 5 by X. You're going to get some 5 by 2s, maybe some 5 by 3s in there when the optimizer pairs up the second side on its own. But a 5 by 2 is the most common winning combination on decent sized slates, so we might use half of our lineups mandate that they be 5 by 2s, maybe 20% of them, 15%, 30%, 50%, all of them. I don't care what you do. I'm just showing you what I typically do. Whatever I use, if I even used all of these, as long as this number here adds up to 100%, right? 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, whatever. If it adds up to 100%, then you're going to get mostly, like 98, 99% of the time, they're going to be stacked the way you want them stacked in terms of a formation. Now, in terms of setting up those stacks and giving it the teams to focus on, you can choose any teams that you want. You can uncheck these teams, you can check them back, you can put different weights and measures on them. And what I saved for you was the minimums that I'm going to do. I'm using the leverage tool to show me the ownership, and I'm just going to play by the chalk in a situation like this. The highest owned team, I'm going to have the most of. The second highest owned team, I'm going to have the second most of. Okay, and I put little weights on these guys, and I usually like to use 10 teams. You can use 5. You can use 3. You can use whatever you want to use. You can use all of the teams if you want to. I like to use 10. And the way I weight these guys accordingly is very, very simple. I take the highest chalk team, which was the New York Yankees, and I put 19% on them. Why? Because this is just the way that I do it. If you want to put 25 on them, do it. But you're going to have to make these maximums work out to 100%, because once it uses 20% or 19% of New York Yankees, I'm forcing it to not use that stack anymore and go looking for other stacks. It will find the next best stack. Maybe that's, the New York Mets. I don't know. And it's going to get up to 8% of those, and I'm forcing it to move on again. Okay? And it's going now, theoretically, if that number adds up to 100, I don't need to put minimums on any of these teams. Because once it just ripples down, 19 of these, 15 of these, 15 of these, 15 of these, 8 of these, 8 of these, 8 of these, 4 of these, 4 of these, and 4 of these. That number, 19, 15, 15, 15, 8, 8, 8, 4, 4, 4, adds up to 100%. So I don't need to use minimums. If I wanted to, I could put a minimum of 15% on New York, right? And it's going to force 15% of my lineups to be New York. You can use this however you want. You could use this across all of the teams across the slate, put 2% on everybody as a minimum, and then start controlling your maximums, and that way you've got a little bit of everybody. You can do that. This is going to be up to you to experiment with, play with, see what works, see what makes sense to you, and then, of course, implement it. That's all this is. You don't even have to use these up here if you're doing this, right? If you're controlling it that much. On the right side, I don't want to put too much on the domination station. I certainly don't want to re-weight everything, because I don't want only one Washington-Cleveland combination, right? And then it starts using other combos. I want it to mix and match from a few teams. I don't want it to get to 4% of Boston combos and then all of a sudden go, well, I'm out of those. If it wants to use more because of salary or because of something it sees in a mini stack, I want to let it do it. I want to control one thing, and that's basically my stack formations on the left side, my big 5 stack, and I want to control what teams are in it and how much of them I see. The rest of it, I'm leaving mostly up to the optimizer. What pitchers? I don't know. I don't care. What what secondary stack? It's probably going to be relatively chalky. I don't know. I don't care. All I'm doing is shipping this off and controlling the big stack side of things. Now, if you want to spend more time on it than I do, by all means, do it. I'm just setting this up like a robot, so I can do this every single day. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and I can let the variance and the volatility flow through me. Okay, only 18 teams could be generated. That's a problem. Now I have to go figure out why the hell it did. Probably this right here. If I drop this down to a 160, I can probably try it again. And then we'll see. Because again, you have to know where your restrictions are when you start getting those little error messages in the optimizer. And the most restrictive thing I'm doing right now is jamming chalk in here. Okay, so hopefully we get down to something a little bit more reasonable. It looks like it's not going to have as much of a problem. If I wanted to be really nitpicky, maybe I can go up. If this gets me all 50, maybe I can go up and try to make it a little bit heavier on the ownership and take that back up to say 170 or 180. What I'm doing is I'm forcing the bottom level of chalk in my lineup. I'm keeping my lineups relatively chalky pretty much at all times. In my back testing, in my research, I have found out that heavy chalk in your lineups, a good foundation, a good chunk of chalk in your lineups, provides some protection. You don't need to get that funky except in one key area. Like I said, maybe it's the pitcher. Maybe it's the secondary stack. Maybe it's the primary stack. I use the primary stack, and then I try to force the rest of it in to be relatively chalky. That way I only have to hit one thing really, really hard and generate some leverage. The rest of it is all buoyed by the bulk of people playing those contests. If I'm in there with them, we're going to all go up to a certain level. And if we all have a good night, what's going to differentiate me? Where I made my slight pivots. If we have a mediocre night, what's going to differentiate me? Where I made those slight pivots. It can push me past that basically pig in a python graphically, where I get on the other side of that bell curve, and now all of a sudden I'm at least min cashing or making better and better and better money and possibly winning these tournaments. Okay, that's how this is going to play out a lot of the time. So if I review these stacks and go through, I can see the pitcher. I'm very heavy on these top guys right here, right? We got a ton of them. If you wanted to cap that, like I said, at 45% per pitcher, be my guest. You can do that. I don't. I'm not afraid to go all in on guys, right? 88%, 78%. I'm way over the field on very chalky pitchers anyway. So they have good nights like they're supposed to. Everybody has a little bit of them. I've got a lot of them, right? Everybody has a lot of them. I have a lot more of them. Okay. You could make a pivot and take a bunch of Bauer if you want to. It'd be very smart. I look at the teams, maybe some of the stacks that I'm using. There's a lot of teams. And again, it's going to be weighted by chalk. Okay. I look at the stacks. New York, there's my 18% there. It didn't get to the 19 max. Probably because I made 50 lineups instead of 100. But 14, 14, 12, 6, 6, 6, 6 should have been 8, 4, 4, 2, 2, whatever. Okay. It's close. That's what I care about. I've got my weights set up. The teams that I want more of, I have more of. And then these secondary teams, look, it didn't take 30% on anybody. Instead, it's spread out. Some nights it'll do that. That's okay. I'm letting the optimizer figure that part out. It's mixing and matching as it sees fit. If I wanted to look at combinations, I can look at combinations and see I've got Boston, New York 4 times. I've got New York, San Diego 3 times. As long as I've got New York, Cleveland, New York, San Francisco, as long as I've got some other combinations, I'm good. I can come through here and see that not everything's stacked up perfectly. It happens quite a bit. If that's your problem and you want 50 perfectly stacked lineups, make 55 lineups next time. Run a few more than you need, and then trim out the ones that you don't like by just unchecking that box right there. Okay? But I'm looking at a chalky stack of 190, almost, down here to about 160, which is the bottom of the barrel for me. It's a 5x3 Washington, San Francisco stack. And I look at that and say 1, 3, 6, 7, 8 for my Washington stack. If I find another Washington stack, 1, 2, 5, 6, 8. So it changed. That's what I want. I want varying stacks. If I look at New York, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How about that? Top 5 stacks. Great. 1, 2, 4, 7. 4, 5, 7. 1, 2, 4, 5, 7. So it swaps a player or two in and out. I like that. I like it also that New York, there's Washington with the Dodgers. There's the Mets with nobody. That's a 5 by X stack. There's The Mets with Cleveland, 5-2. There's Washington with the Giants. It's different. It's switching and swapping and matching with different teams. This is what's going to give me the opportunity to create multiple combinations and maybe land on that winning combination. If the Washington stacks do really, really well, all of those lineups will probably do really, really well. It's just a matter of who paired up with the better second stack, right? Or the better pitcher. Those are the situations that we're also going to key on. And by spreading out a wider net, you give yourself those chances. I'm cutting it down to 10 teams because I want significant stacks, significant chunks of those teams because I believe those are the teams that have the best chances of success, right? And when that happens, now I'm set up fairly well from top to bottom. This is just a quick way to use this optimizer and a quick way to actually ensure that you've got a strong foundation of chalk. A friend of mine once told me, the chalk gets you to the wedding. It gets you invited to the wedding, right? But it's that one little pivot, that one little uniqueness that gets you to sleep with the bride. And it's that simple. We're going to try and get invited to as many weddings as we possibly can. And then within that chunk, within that chalk, within that foundation of high-owned players, we're then going to find the pivot here or there that make the difference that pushes us the rest of the way. That's how people win tournaments. And if you need that type of information, you need access to these tools, you need to come see me at dfsarmy.com. And you need to ask, what do I do? How do I get better? And we'll talk about your game. Baseball, football, hockey, basketball, it doesn't matter. If I don't know the answer, I know who does. And I'll send you over to that guy. And what you're going to find is as a community, we dig into you and we teach you to become a better player. So again, down in the description, link, coupon code, all that stuff. Like, subscribe to the video. Keep me producing this content. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you taking the time to spend with me. And let's go win a bunch of money tonight, huh? Let's do it. See ya.